start. Today, in this session, you are going to learn about Heroku, what is it, and how can you integrate it with Salesforce. Also, I have a couple of demos. I need to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. These are going to be live coding demos. They are not scripted. So things might fail as a normal live coding demo, but let's hope we can learn a lot of this session. My name is Julián Duque. I am a lead developer advocate here at Salesforce, working mainly with the Heroku team. I am originally from the beautiful city of Medellin in Colombia, South America, but currently living in the Tampa Bay area in United States, in the state of Florida. Here is my contact information if you want to drop me an email with any questions, or you can also follow me on Twitter with the handle @Julián_Duque. I have my DMs open, so if you have any questions that you want to ask me after the session, feel free to do it, and I will be more than happy to reply. Remember that you can also connect with us, and let me move now to the proper computer. You can also connect with us on the following resources. We have the developer website at developer.salesforce.com with a bunch of resources that we always share with our community. You can also follow the Salesforce Devs account with a lot of information, news about different events and live streamings we are doing lately. And we are also on other social networks. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and my favorite right now, it will be our YouTube channel. If you don't know about the YouTube channel, go ahead to youtube.com/c/Salesforce Developers. We are publishing a lot of content in our channel, and we are also running live streams all over the developer relation team, the architect relation team, and the developer podcast. All of that content is being released into the Salesforce Developers YouTube channel. Go ahead, subscribe, and don't forget to click on the little bell so you get notifications about our upcoming sessions and the content we are releasing there. More needs to come in the future, so stay tuned on the future events because we have some wonderful announcements for you all that I cannot talk today because they are spoilers. Some forward-looking statements, even though everything that I'm going to be talking about today is public, it is already available. I might mention certain things that are not publicly available yet. So this is a forward-looking statement. Don't invest your money in stocks based on the things I do. I am not a financial advisor and I don't know anything about that. So just be aware and be smart about your investments. Now it is time to start. And feel free to unmute yourself if you know about this. Don't worry if you interrupt me. You are not interrupting me. You are just participating. Let me know if any of you recognize what is this, what it means, or if you have any idea about Heroku. Just one or two people can unmute yourself and tell me, what do you know about Heroku?
Powerful code platform on the cloud that we can use however we want instead of a server, something like that.
Awesome! I love that answer. And another one that can give me an answer. Somebody muted, but he's not speaking. I'm just waiting.
Heroku is a platform as a service. I mean, yeah, and mostly taken care by Salesforce.
Yes. Awesome. That's a great answer. And
one extra features it gives is, it has amazing feature called Heroku Connect.
Wow.
Which gels well with Salesforce.
So don't get ahead of me. We are going to be speaking about that at the end. But thank you very much. That's great. And exactly, what is your name? I am not looking at the screen right now. I'm just looking at the slide so I can see you. So what's your name?
Abhishek.
Bichek. Thank you very much. That's exactly what's coming next. Heroku is a platform as a service. This is a cloud native term that pretty much let us know that we have a platform where we can run our applications. We don't need to worry about the operations of this platform. We don't need to worry about the DevOps side of things like configuring, making sure what type of servers are we running. We are just letting the people behind the team take care of those things for us, and we are just going to focus on our application development. What other platform as a service do you know and use as Salesforce developers every day? Exactly, that it's going to be Salesforce. Salesforce is another platform as a service. Even though Salesforce might be categorized as software as a service, Salesforce is way more than just a software, because you can build applications, you can deploy to Salesforce, you can build powerful integrations, and Salesforce can be considered as a platform as a service as well. So Heroku is just part of the same platform to deploy applications, and we are going to be talking a little bit more about that later. So what does that mean to have a platform as a service? Normally, when we want to create an application, let's say we have an idea and we want to develop this idea and make this idea available to the public, or this application available to the public, normally we need to make a lot of decisions. For example, we need to choose an infrastructure as a service provider, the ones that are going to provide the servers and all of the infrastructure to deploy our application. And then we need to pick one. There is AWS from Amazon, there is Azure from Microsoft, there is Google Cloud from Google. So we will need to pick one. Then we need an operating system. What operating system our application is going to run on? It will be Linux, it will be Windows. If it is Linux, what version of Linux? And if it is Windows, what type of license do we have? Then we need to start making other decisions. Are we going to use containers? What databases are we going to use? Are we going to use any orchestration to manage those containers? What type of networking settings are we going to use on our application? Are we doing load balancing? Are we managing the DNS? Then how are we going to monitor our application? How are we going to manage logs? And we need to make a lot of decisions. This is why a lot of companies and us as developers need to be working with other people that are more expert in this type of subjects. This is why DevOps or site reliability engineers exist, because they are the ones that manage all of this for you. A platform as a service like Heroku usually have a set of opinionated options for you. Pretty much we are going to be choosing, in our case, we select AWS, we are going to be using Linux, we use some sort of containerization using our build packs. We offer certain databases services on Heroku. We are using certain types of orchestration. So we manage to pretty much make these decisions for you and have a specific team behind managing this. So you don't need a DevOps team or somebody else making the decisions for you if you are going to be deploying to Heroku. So pretty much on Heroku, we are going to be offering you some abstractions or some tools so you can focus on your idea. You are going to be using the Heroku tools to deploy your application. You are going to be using the Heroku tools to manage your application, then to scale your application while you are needing way more resources or more people are accessing your application. You can add more resources to it using very simple tools, and then publishing your application to the public. So the idea with a platform like Heroku is for you to manage on your, to focus on your business, to focus on the development of your application, not the operations of your application. What's in Heroku? So Heroku offers you certain different layers. You can run applications on Heroku for free. And we also have like performance dyno with a lot of CPU and RAM. So you can run like way more robust applications on Heroku. We support different integrations, and we are going to mention one of those later, some security features. And on top of that, we have what we call the app management layer, where you can manage the scaling of your application. You can monitor how your application is behaving, watching certain resources like CPU, memory, response time. You can manage logs for your application. You get metrics, and you can also add third-party services that are created by other different companies that are going to be working pretty well with Heroku. Something similar to App Exchange, for example, but for applications on Heroku. And we also have the layer of compliance and trust. There are certain applications that have specific needs. For example, if your application is managing personal information or health information, you might need to use something called Heroku Shield. Heroku Shield is where you can deploy applications that are going to be PCI or HIPAA certified. In certain countries, you will need to have some sort of certification in order to be able to manage personal data. So this allows you to have, like, for example, an encrypted file system, which is ephemeral, no information is going to be leaked. And you also have private spaces, which in cloud terms is like having your own virtual private cloud. Normally, Heroku is a multi-tenant environment, so you are going to share resources with other people. The other people can't look at what you are doing. They don't have access to what you are doing due to the containerization nature of Heroku. But if you want to have your own private cloud with your own network configuration, so you can easily set up a VPN connection between Heroku and, let's say, a service that is running on AWS, or access a database that is currently running on AWS, you can use something called private spaces. So in that case, Heroku is from the hobby developer or the student that is just starting learning how to develop web applications and just want to use Heroku to do some experiments, to big enterprises that are running thousands and thousands of applications. So this platform as a service is going to be suitable for anybody. Let's do our first deploy, okay? I'm going to show you some resources, and the idea for you is to spend some time after the session to get used to Heroku, follow the tutorials. There is also some Trailhead modules around Heroku that you can start following right now if you also want to get the badge. But my favorite resource, and I'm going to be showing you here, is the Heroku Dev Center. So the URL is going to be devcenter.heroku.com, and from here is where you are going to start your Heroku journey. Here is pretty much the home of all of our documentation, and we provide very good getting started guides. And I'm going to be showing one, which is the Node.js, the language or runtime that I use normally. But depending on your skills or the language you know or the language you want to learn, you can go ahead and follow the rest. In order to use Heroku, you will need to have an account. So you can go to heroku.com, click on sign up. There will be like an icon here. I am already signed up, so I have an account, but you can click on sign up. It will ask you for some information. You can create an account for free. There might be a step where it asks for a credit card. The credit card is just for verifying that you are you and you are not going to be an abuser of some sorts. What is the main difference if you sign up with or without a credit card? And I'm going to tell you the difference. If you sign up without a credit card, you will have access to 500 hours a month to run your applications. And if you do the math, you know that a month have around 752 hours, if I am not wrong. So you might be able to run a web application most of the time of the month. If you sign up with a credit card, you will have access to 1,000 hours a month. That's more time than the normal hours that a month has. So in Heroku, you can run a web application, and also you can run what we call the worker processes. So you can run 752 hours for a web application, and the rest of the hours can be a process that is running every certain time. Let's say you have a web application and you have a process that is doing some data extraction from a database, or is doing some processing, or is running every day at noon to send notifications to your users. You can also do that on Heroku, and I'm going to be showing you in the demo how to do that. So let's get back to the Heroku Dev Center. Go ahead and click on Node.js or the language of your choice, and it will start with a bunch of documentation. The best way to start is by clicking the Get Started with Node.js. When you click on the Get Started with Node.js, you will access to a step-by-step tutorial that will guide you through the features of Heroku. How can you deploy an application locally? How can you view the logs? How can you scale the application, declare dependencies, etc. So it is asking you, depending on the language of your choice, for example, that it assumes that you have a free Heroku account and that you have Node.js and NPM installed locally. It will ask you the same if you are going to follow the Java path or the Python path. I am ready to start. I already have this. Second, Heroku is based on Git. So the deployments are going to be using Git, which is a version control manager for code. So you will need to have Git installed in your computer. If you are already developing applications using the Salesforce CLI, the full SFDX experience, you are already might be familiar with Git. And if I am not wrong, on Trailhead, you can find also resources that will teach you how to use Git. Then you will need the Heroku CLI. Similar to the Salesforce CLI, we provide the Heroku CLI. It is an open source tool that allows you to manage Heroku from the terminal, from a command line interface. You will be able to do the same from the dashboard, but we as developers, I personally recommend the people that is learning with me to get familiar with a terminal, to get familiar with the CLI, and get used to these developer tools because they are going to increase the productivity for you. The idea is to install this Heroku CLI depending on your operating system. We provide different ways of installing it, or the most pretty much universal way of doing it is by running npm install Heroku CLI. And if I'm not wrong, the step might be somewhere, but I am missing it in this specific guide. But on the Salesforce CLI documentation, it will show you that other alternative. But you can go ahead and download the installer depending on your operating system. Then you will need to log into Heroku. So after you created your account, you will need to run from the CLI Heroku login. It will open a web browser. When you open a web browser, it will ask for your credentials, and you will authorize the CLI to use Heroku. How can you verify that you are ready? By running Heroku Who Am I, and Heroku Who Am I is going to let you know which user is logged in on Heroku. In that case, I am using my Heroku account and I am already logged in. Perfect. I already have installed the Heroku CLI. Let's go ahead and create an application. These guides already have an application created, so what you need to do is clone a GitHub repository So you don't need to start your application from scratch. We are learning Heroku right now. Now that you know how to use Heroku, you will be able to start your applications from scratch and start deploying. So let's follow the easy path. Let's clone this project and take a look how this project looks like and how can we deploy it to Heroku. So I'm going to copy and paste this command to clone the Node.js getting started project. I clone the Node.js getting started project, so I am seeing that I have the source code in here, and I can go ahead and click on next. So it is asking me to create an application on Heroku and then to push my application to Heroku and it will be deployed. But before doing that, I wanna take a look at the application, run the application locally so we know what we are going to be deploying to Heroku. So let me open Visual Studio Code. And the experience will be a little bit different depending on the language of your choice. If you are choosing Java or PHP, the source code might be different. But there are like certain fundamental things that are going to be the same for all of the different applications that are going to be deployed to Heroku. One is that most of the applications can use something called the proc file. The proc file or the process file is when we define what command is going to be executed on Heroku for our web process. And also, if we are going to be running a worker process, it can also be defined here. So pretty much, Heroku, when we deploy the application and this application is being put on the dyno, it will execute this command. We also have a way to detect the different languages we are going to be running, and depending of the language we are going to be running, Heroku will pick the specific build pack to, the name said, to build the application and pack it for that specific container. So build packs is part of the Cloud Native Foundation, and it is a technology that was invented here at Heroku, and now it is one very successful open source project that other companies are using to detect, build, and create a container image to deploy their applications. So this is something that we invented here at Heroku, and pretty much when you deploy code, even Java, PHP, Python, the build packs are going to take care of detecting that language and start building the application depending on the build steps that are required for that specific technology. I told you that we support 8 official open source languages on Heroku, but that doesn't mean that you cannot run other language. For example, if you wanna deploy an application on .NET, the community has created a .NET build pack that can be used for this purpose. Or if you wanna run an application using Elixir, Swift, and I think, if I am not wrong, even COBOL is also supported. So there is these elements.heroku.com, which is the Heroku Marketplace that I mentioned you before, where you will have access to the different add-ons that are created by Heroku and other companies. And there is a section called Build Packs. So here in Build Packs, we have our officially supported build packs for the languages we officially support, and others that has been created for the community and by the community. So if I search COBOL, I might be able to search a COBOL build pack. I think I have seen one, but I might be mistaken, but I think somebody did that one like as a joke. But you can also find .NET, for example. There is the .NET Core build pack if you wanna deploy an application using .NET, or if you wanna use Swift, there is the Heroku build pack Swift, or if you wanna use Elixir, there is build packs for Elixir. So there are like different other build packs that are available from the community to use any other language. So let's continue what we are doing. Procfile, remember, it is the file where we specify the command that is going to be executed when we deploy the application to Heroku. Let us run this application locally to see how it looks like. If it is an Node.js application, the first thing I will need to do is run npm install. Npm install is going to fetch all of the dependencies and install the dependencies locally. And the second step is to run Heroku local. Heroku local will execute this application as if it were an application running on Heroku. So it will detect the command that is going to execute to run my application, and now I have something listening on the port 5000. If I open localhost on the port 5000, I see the getting started on Heroku with Node.js. This is the application that we are going to be deploying. Then let's create an application on Heroku and deploy the application in there. So how can we do this? Let's go to the terminal so we see everything better. First, remember, we need to have a Git repository. So we already know that this is a Git repository. If we do any change, we will need to commit the change, and then we will do a Git push. But in order to do a Git push, we need to create a space in Heroku to deploy the application. So how can we do that? By running Heroku Create. Heroku Create is going to create that application where we are going to deploy our code. You can specify a name. This name needs to be unique, or you can run it without the name and Heroku will pick a random name for you. I personally like to name my applications, so I'm going to be using Duque, my name, and then this is intro Heroku Helsinki. This is going to be the name of my application. I'm going to create the space, and now it is giving me a URL. Intro Heroku Helsinki. I'm going to be clicking on that URL, and I'm seeing that I don't have anything yet. It says, welcome to your new app, but there is no application deployed. If I go to my dashboard, like dashboard.heroku.com, if I refresh, now I'm seeing that there is the intro Heroku Helsinki, but it doesn't have any language support. It doesn't have anything in it. So I already created my application. Next, what I need to do is to deploy. So how can we deploy? By running git push Heroku main. I am using main because that's my Git branch. If you are using master, you will need to be using master in Git. So we support those two main branches, main and master, so you know. I'm going to be doing git push Heroku main. What is Heroku in this case? You can check with git remote to see the different remotes that we have. Origin is going to be where our code lives, and Heroku is going to be the Git server where my code is going to be deployed. So if you have this Heroku origin, you can run git push Heroku main. What's going to happen? I am sending the code to Heroku. Heroku is checking what build pack is going to use for the app, and it detects that it is a Node.js application. Then start setting up the environment for the application, resolve the version of Node that we are going to be using. This will happen with any language, with Java, PHP, Python, depending of the parameters you provide. Then it's going to install the dependencies for the application. It's going to build a container image that we call it a slug. And that container image is going to be put on a dyno. Remember that the dyno is that virtual machine where our applications are going to run. So when we put the application on the dyno, we detect on the profile that we have a process that we are going to be executing, which is the web process. And then we cut a release. we release our application on this URL. And if we go back to that URL, and if we refresh, now we see that our application has been deployed. We can go to the dashboard, refresh. Now we see that our application is running. It is using Node.js. And I can go ahead and click and see what happened. So we are seeing that there is some activity. I have been doing some deploys, and I deployed a specific commit from my application. Then we see that we are using a free dyno, so our dyno is running npm start. And there is way more things that we are going to take a look later. Let me continue with the presentation. And later we are going to be doing another demo. Good. So that's Heroku. That's our first deploy. The idea with Heroku is to focus on the developer experience, to make the deployment of your application, of the management of your application, a very simple task. So you don't need to have a full team dedicated to do this for you. And you see that it's automated, and you are using pretty much tools that as a developer you might be used to use on your daily work, like Git. So continuing with our talk, what we did is pretty much simplify that deploy, management, and scaling of your application. So you as a developer, you focus on coding your application, you focus on the code, and then you build the application and deploy it to Heroku. Heroku takes care of running the application on a dyno, manage your application, and you will be able to add different add-ons, for example, a database, and we are going to be seeing how to add a database to our application. And then the users will have access to our website. You can go ahead and open that website that I just deployed on your computers, and you are going to see the same result. You are going to see the Node.js getting started page in there. There is a lot of people and companies that are trusting Heroku. We currently have more than 26 billion requests per day. By request, I mean people reaching out to applications deployed to Heroku. There are more than 9 million applications created on Heroku, more than 175 add-on services, both supported officially by Heroku and by other companies. For example, if you are looking forward to send emails, you can use a service like SendGrid, or if you want to use a MySQL database, there are like different providers of a MySQL database that you can use on your application, or if you want to use some logs, you can use Papertrail or other different technologies. Those are available through the Elements Marketplace. And we also host more than 2 million managed data stores, more than 2 million Heroku, Redis, and Apache Kafka databases on Heroku. But remember, Heroku is part of the Salesforce platform. We are also part of the different solutions that Salesforce offers to you developers. So remember that all of the services that we have on our Salesforce platform, from the UI, which is Lightning Web Components and Lightning Web Components open source, application lifecycle management, ecosystem, etc., Heroku is part of all of the different layers. So you can see on top, Lightning Web Components open source applications can be deployed to Heroku. On the application lifecycle management, the Heroku CLI, the build packs, and the pipelines, which is the CI/CD solution we offer. It's also part of the Salesforce platform. Ecosystem, you will be able to add different extensions to your application through Heroku add-ons. Compute and runtime Heroku, it is elastic architecture, and there is something that it's coming very closely in the future. I can say any date, which is Salesforce Functions. Salesforce Functions is going to be an amazing technology. So you can use an elastic architecture to extend your Salesforce applications, and that's something that it's powered by the Heroku infrastructure. There is mobile templates for applications, different support for open source languages, Heroku data, which are like the Postgres, Redis, and Kafka databases that I mentioned before, security with private spaces and Heroku Shield, and integration with Heroku Connect, which is the technology that allows you to integrate a database deployed on Heroku with Salesforce data. Some of the products and services that we offer, these are like the ones that are most important to me. Heroku Postgres is a secure and managed database as a service. So you can easily host a PostgreSQL database on Heroku, and I'm going to show you exactly how in a moment. There is also Heroku Flow, which is a CI/CD solution that we support. You will be able to specify the different stages of your application, like staging and production, and manage the releases from these. And there is also from here, and there is also a very good feature that we have, which is the review apps. When you are working with GitHub and with a different team, once you create a pull request with a change, that pull request can be automatically deployed to Heroku as a review app. It is going to be an ephemeral application that your teammates can go ahead and take a look to see if the changes you have provided are good, and specifically review the application by going to this ephemeral app that has been deployed by a pull request. From there, they will be able to approve the pull request, merge the code to master or staging, and that will automatically deploy the application to the next stage. And then from there, you will be able to promote your changes to production and manage the full application life cycle here. And there is also Heroku Connect. Heroku Connect is a very simple way to integrate Heroku with Salesforce data. So there are like two different ways of integration. One integration is mapping Salesforce objects into a PostgreSQL database running on Heroku. So developers that are not familiar with Salesforce and don't know about SQL or Apex, they can also interact with data using the open source languages and SQL query language that they already know, without needing to learn way more about Salesforce. And it can work the other way around. By using external objects, you can expose data that is already on Postgres, so it can be accessed in Salesforce as objects that are living there. So you will be able to run reports and create applications that are using this data that comes from a PostgreSQL application on Heroku. Let's say, for example, that the company has been running a third-party service for a while, or they bought an application that supports PostgreSQL, and then they are asking you, hey, we need that data in Salesforce. We need to have visibility of that data, and we are going to be writing an application that is going to interact with that information. You can use Heroku Connect to be able to reach that data from Salesforce. So it is time for our second demo, and this demo is going to be a little bit more long. Let's see, how are we going with time? Perfect. I think I am still in the range of the hour. So I have 15 minutes to do this demo, and let's hope everything is going to be great. We already have our application in Node.js, right? We deployed our first application. It is running on Heroku. We will be able to scale and interact with this application. Let me show you how that works. So I am here on my deployed app. I have access to the resources, and here from the resources, you see that I'm running on a free dyno. Well, let's say that this application is a production application and I want to scale it. I want to add more services so people can have access to these without having any sort of slowness or performance issues. So I can change my dyno type, and let's say I'm going to be using a standard dyno, which is going to cost a little bit more, but it's okay. And now I am running on a standard dyno. This is a standard dyno. Now it has 512 megabytes of RAM. It has way more CPU. And if I need more resources, I can easily scale it by just clicking on my dashboard. I can also do this from the terminal by running Heroku PS. Here on Heroku PS, it is showing me that I have a web application running on a standard dyno. So I already changed that 21 seconds ago. And if I click, for example, standard 2x and run Heroku PS, oh, I need to confirm, obviously, because I'm going to be changing that. And if I run Heroku PS, you see that the change is pretty much automatically, and my process is just restarting. It's moving the process to a better virtual machine, and now the process might be starting right now. From here, I can also scale the application. Scale means that how many dynos are going to be using while running my app. Right now, I am running 1. Let's say that I want to run in 2. So right now, the same application is running on 2 different virtual machines, and when a request comes into Heroku, the Heroku router is going to balance the load, and it will be redirecting the request to every dyno. So all of the dynos are getting requests, and you are not overloading one specific dyno with a lot of information. If I run Heroku PS, you can see that now I have 2 different dynos. I can also scale from my terminal. I can say, okay, the scale processes, and the web process is going to be 10 different dynos. So right now, I say that my application is going to be running on 10 dynos. This is a very popular application. Somebody published our link on Hacker News or on Twitter, or it is Black Friday or a special holiday, and we are on sale, and we need to increase the load of our application, and now you can see that we are running on 10 different dynos. So that's how we pretty much can scale our application. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more expensive because we are using more resources. You can also enable automatic deploys. For example, I can connect to GitHub, and every time I push to my branch, it will automatically deploy to my application. I also have access to metrics. So here, for example, I'm taking a look at the different events, the memory that my application is using, the response time. So every time I receive a request, how much time it's taking the application to reply, so I can see if I might have any performance issues from here. So we have some other capabilities that you can monitor here from the Heroku dashboard, and you can also set up access. Let's say I want to add another teammate as collaborator on my application, and I can do it immediately and directly from here. And I can also manage different teams. For example, right now I am on my personal account, but you can have like enterprise accounts and teams depending on the needs of your specific organization. Let's go ahead and talk about the Roku Connect. So in order to have Heroku Connect, in order to integrate Salesforce with Heroku, we need to add a Postgresql database. How can we add a Postgresql database? There are multiple ways of doing it. You can go ahead through the resources tab, search a specific add-on, for example, Postgres. Let's add the Heroku Postgres database, and it will ask me to provision my database. I can select the free version, or depending on my needs, I can pay for a specific plan. The free version allows you to have up to 10,000 rows and 1 gigabyte of storage. But if you need more than that, you need to upgrade to the paid plans. But for what we are going to be doing today, free is good. And let me move to free. I want to move to free for all of these experiments, so you know that you can do this on your own. There is no magic behind. You can do this pretty much on your own. So I'm free. Again, I am free. I am not paying anything for my application, and I am still going to be adding a Postgresql database. So let's add a Postgresql database, but let's not do it from here. Let's do it from the CLI, because I like CLIs. So I am going to be creating an add-on, is going to be called PostgreSQL, and the plan that we are going to be adding is it's the hobby dev. So you can also use the CLI to provision a database on Heroku. And right now you see that that database has been named as database URL, uppercase. What does this mean? This is an environment variable that will contain the connection string our database. If I run Heroku config, I have access to the different configuration settings of my applications. And now you can see that the database URL is just a PostgreSQL URL with the username and the password. So this is how we can get the configuration to connect from code depending on the language we are using. But Heroku also provides a way to, for example, connect to that PostgreSQL database from the CLI. I can run Heroku PSQL. PSQL is the PostgreSQL client that is a CLI tool that lets you get into this database. You will need to have PSQL installed in your computer, but the Heroku PSQL command will pretty much set up the URL for you, so you don't need to provide the username, password, and host. That makes the command a little bit difficult to execute. This is just improving the developer experience. Now we are in the database, we can see if we have any tables. We don't have any relationships so far, but we are going to fix that by integrating our application with Salesforce. So let me quit, refresh. We have Heroku Postgres, awesome. And why we started with Heroku Postgres? Because Heroku Connect, the thing that I want to show you right now, how to integrate this application with Salesforce, needs a PostgreSQL database. Second, we might want to add the Connect add-on. And the Connect add-on is also available for free, so you can use the demo edition for free. I'm going to submit the provision order, and that's it. I have Heroku Connect on my application. Next is to set up Heroku Connect. How can we set it up? Let's click on Heroku Connect to open the dashboard. You can also do the same for Postgres. If I click on the Heroku Postgres, it will give me a dashboard with my database information. So here I am seeing the number of connections, the rows, the availability of my database. I can go ahead on settings and take a look at the credentials. So this is the dashboard for Postgres, but I am interested in Heroku Connect. Let's start by setting up a connection. So to use Heroku Connect, we need two things: a PostgreSQL database running on Heroku and a Salesforce org. So let's go ahead and set up a connection. It is asking us for a database. Cool, we already have a PostgreSQL database ready, and it asks us for a schema name. This is going to be the schema in Postgres where our Salesforce tables are going to be created. Salesforce is a great name for it. Next, I am going to choose the Salesforce organization. So it is asking us, okay, what type of organization or environment are you going to use? Are you production, are you sandbox, or are you going to use your custom org with your custom domain? Let's say I'm going to be using production with the latest and greatest API. I'm going to authorize the connection. So this is going to do all of the OAuth thens. It's going to open the login.salesforce.com. It is asking me for the account I want to log in with. So I'm going to be using my developer account. I am authorizing Heroku Connect, and now it says that I am authorized. Connection status idle. I already have connected Heroku Connect and Salesforce. Then we need to bring Salesforce objects into my database. How can we do that? By using the mappings. So I can go ahead and click on the mappings section, and I need to create maps for the different objects we are interested in bringing. So what are those objects? Let's create a mapping, and it will show us a list of the supported Salesforce objects that we can add into our Heroku database. And as you can see here, some things that are like familiar to you, for example, the account, and there is assets. You are going to see contacts, leads, and a lot of different information that can be brought up to my Salesforce organization. What I'm going to be doing is bringing a custom object called Bear. Bear is from an application called Ursus Park, that is part of one of our sample apps, or it's an application that you can find on Trailhead. So I want to bring these beautiful bears into my Postgresql database. So I am picking up that object, the bear object, and here I am setting up how I'm going to be interacting with the object. There is the Salesforce to database integration, so how I'm going to bring in data from Salesforce to my database, and it will do it on a poll. So every 10 minutes is going to be asking for changes. When you pay, this will be less time. I mean, this is the free version, so every 10 minutes is going to be asking for changes, but when you are on a paid plan, this is going to be faster. And I also can enable the accelerate polling, which is going to use the Salesforce streaming API to trigger the polls. So when a change happens, it will trigger this poll on the supported objects, and we are going to get the changes quicker. The other way of interacting with information is from my database to Salesforce. So if we wanna have, if we wanna update objects from PostgreSQL, we can enable this. But the thing is that we will need to create an external ID. So if I select right, it is showing me that we need to create an external ID, and it's giving me access to the documentation to show us how can we enable that on our Salesforce object. For time's sake, because now I'm running out of time, I'm going to be setting up this as read only. And then, what are the fields that I want to bring into my database? I don't need everything. I just need certain specific information from my bears. It only works with not computed fields. So for example, if I want to use the age, it's going to show me a warning. Hey, this is a computed field, a calculated field. It is not syncable. So instead of age, I want to bring the birth date. I want to bring the height of the birds, and let's say I want to bring the sex of the birds and the weight. So I want to have some sort of monitoring of my birds in my PostgreSQL database. Let's save this mapping, and now it is creating a new table on Heroku, and it is bringing all of the data. So that's what's happening right now. Now I have the bears. I can go ahead, click on the Explorer, and I have my data here, the different bears. If I go to PostgreSQL, here on Heroku, I click on Data Clips. Data Clips is a way where we can also query our database from a graphical interface. So I'm going to create a new data clip. This is going to be called bears. And it is showing me the different tables that I have available. For example, Salesforce.bear and the different fields. So I can run an SQL query, select name, and select height from Salesforce.bear. Save and run, and it will bring the information. I have my bears and I have the height. So I now have that data available on my Heroku PostgreSQL database. Next step will be how can we list that information from my Node.js application. So I have a question for you, Enrico. Can I use 5 minutes to show that, or we call it up to this point?
Yeah, let's show it quickly. We have some questions already in the chat, so we can show that quickly, and then we go to the Q&A.
Okay, let's do something really quick. So I can show you how can I bring this data into my Node.js application, and then we finalize. But now you can see that I have the data available on my database. So what do I need to do in my Node.js application, or Java or PHP, or depending on the language of your choice? I will need to connect to the database and bring the information. For Node, I am going to be using PG, which is the PostgreSQL driver. So let's go ahead and install PostgreSQL on my Node.js application. I already installed PG. Then I'm going to be opening Visual Studio Code. Let's open the server, and I will add a new API route called API bears. So these have two objects, the request and response. And from here, I will do a PostgreSQL connection and bring my bears. How can we do that? Using PostgreSQL, the driver, I'm going to create a poll, which is a class that allows me to have connection pool into my database, so many users can access to the database at the same time by reusing a connection pool. Then I'm going to create an instance of that pool by passing a configuration object, and this configuration object will require a connection string. Remember that the connection string is an environment variable called database URL. So we can get it from the process, the environment, and it's called database URL. Then, since the database is deployed on Heroku, we will need to specify that it supports a secure socket layer, so it's going to be a secure connection. Now we have a database instance here, and what we need to do is to get the rows and execute a query that will bring the name, the height, the weight, and the sex of my bears. It's like this, it's bear, right? This is the query. I need to make this function asynchronous, and I need to send this result as a JSON. So right now I am querying my database locally on Node.js. I am returning the information. Last thing that I need to do is pretty much set the database URL here on the .env file so we can load it locally. I'm going to be doing that by running Heroku config, bring me the information as a shell, and store all of the information into that file. Now I have access to the database URL from that file. And if I run Heroku local, it's going to load that file. It's going to run my application on the port 5000. I can go ahead and open the application on the port 5000, run API bears, and it will return a JSON object with the different bears that we have on our application. If I change something on my application, I will get the changes here depending on the polling time. And if I deploy this to Heroku, and we can start deploying this to Heroku while we go ahead and start receiving questions. So let me add my files to Git. Never add the .env file to Git because you don't want to leak your credentials. So I am not doing that. Then I'm going to commit this, add a database, doing the git push Heroku main, and this is going to be deploying to Heroku. So after it finalizes the deployment to Heroku, we can check on Heroku that now we have access to our bears, our Salesforce data. And with that, I finalize my talk. So, thank you very much for paying attention to this session. And now it is time for some questions. let me see. Heroku API burst. Let me see if it works. API burst, and voila, I am on Heroku with my beautiful